here. And seated next to him is Swekid. Swekid, I never use your actual name, so your government name. I do know your government name.
You do?
Yeah. And joining us from London is Mensa. This conversation is a very important one. It's a follow-up from the conversation last year. And it was fantastic. If you joined us last year at the festival, there's no other closing to Peja that we would rather have than these three in conversation. So, I don't want to talk too much, the proverbial much ado. I'd like to welcome everyone. Kindly, if you are at the back, hello. For those at the back, you can keep sitting there, that's fine. But if you can, out of respect, keep your voices low so that we can start the program here. And as the program wears on, kindly remember to keep your voices low. If your phone is still out loud, please put it on vibration or silence so that we can have a wonderful program. The three people here do not need an introduction. So I'm not going to do it. I'll leave that up to Sway and how he wants to handle it. But for us at Writers Project, Goethe Institute, and the Peja Literary Festival, we are truly honored to welcome these three to the conversation tonight.
Recording in progress.
Okay, Mensa. Charlie, why you do that? Tonight's conversation is art in resistance. 2 years ago, is it already 2 years, we were hit by a pandemic. And that affected a lot of things. But it didn't mean that before then we weren't living, or we didn't have problems and we didn't have joys. Artists persisted and they went on and went about their duties. And so we must carry on as we did before, changing things the way we want, and artists are at the forefront of that. And tonight's conversation is exactly what we want it to be. So I'm really honored to be here to welcome you all to this evening's conversation, Art in Resistance. Sway, it's all yours.
Hello. Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to moderate this panel. When Nanayo actually sent me the invitation, I nearly turned it down. But when he mentioned that Panji and Mensa are going to be the guests, I accepted, because these are two stalwarts when it comes to the Ghanaian art scene. Panji has done everything from TV to music to radio. And Mensa is one of the most amazing people that I've ever met. His art speaks for itself, and have contributed and continues to contribute to the art space, both through his creative means as well as his social interaction. So I think we're going to have a very enlightened conversation tonight between these two gentlemen. They know each other as well, so it's not.
I don't know him.
Hey, Panji.
I won't deny you before you deny me.
I see. Somebody had to take your name clean fast.
So I'm sure we're going to have a very fruitful discussion. Mensa, thank you for joining us. Panji, it's nice having you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
For starters, let us set the grounds work. Mr. Panji, let me start with you. When we talk about art as a tool of resistance, what actually comes to mind?
Well, I chose a life in the arts because I realized we often lacked the alternative viewpoint, or we lacked an alternative to a way of thinking. So, for instance, let's say right now the thinking is that democracy is the best kind of government for Ghana. Nobody argues about it. Nobody questions whether it could be nonsense or not. And I wanted to find myself in the space where we could ask questions. Is this kind of, two-party democracy the best form of government for Ghana? And I wanted I tried journalism, and I found journalism didn't actually allow me to tell the truth. I had to say whatever my employers wanted me to say. So I thought the only space in which I could speak my truth was in the arts, where I could say what I felt was valid for me, and people could decide whether to consider it, reject it, or accept it. So for me, when I think of art as a tool, I think of art as the tool to show or to demonstrate all the choices and opportunities and possibilities that there are. So for me, resistance is simply making people aware of the fact that there are options, there are alternatives. I think that alone for me is an act of resistance. So with my art and with my music, I've tried to explore whatever I think is not in the mainstream, or what has been ignored, or what has been overlooked. And I don't know whether that is an act of resistance, but I think awareness is an important part of how we behave.
Yeah. Mensa, with you, I've been following your career for a while, since your days with the Lifeline family, and looking at the kind of songs that you were making back then. Now, you could draw some differences in terms of messages, in terms of content. For you, at what point did you realize that there's the need for you to use your art to propagate this sort of, or to break barriers and focus on more social issues rather than the everyday issues that people talk about?
Thank you for this question. For me, and I'm going to try as much as possible to make this, kind of give my personal experiences and my take on these things from a very personal point of view. So for me, I was lucky to have started making music at a pretty young age. And that in itself, the first thing that I ever created was, in a sense, a form of resistance. You can imagine being in my early teens, maybe even before I was a teenager, where my mom was encouraging me to play classical music and to play hymnals, and I was sent into church to play for the church and so on and so forth, and me discovering hip hop music. And now I wanted to play the melody for I Need Love, for LL Cool J, or try different things that weren't in some classical piano recitals, or and just kind of starting to think outside the box and trying different things, which was a form of me building my identity. And that in itself is hey, Charlie, you're going against the grain already, and the resistance begins there. And then it's going into boarding school, and just once again, when you go into these establishments where it's you have to obey instructions without asking questions and follow, toe the line and not ask any questions. My art at its very early stage also came to play, where I got suspended from school because I ran away from school to record for Lifeline Family. You see what I mean? And that got me indefinitely suspended. But at the same time, I was performing okay as a student, but the other things that I had to offer was not being appreciated. And so naturally, I think this is with most human beings, the thing that where you face resistance the most is where you kind of want to push more. And so that became the mouthpiece for me to really prove to myself that I can do this. I can go against what everybody's saying that I shouldn't do, and just so it's from a very personal point of view. that resistance begins there. And then also when you're in society, like art, being an artist and politics cannot be separated. When I say politics, I don't mean, party politics and so on and so forth, but just kind of social awareness and looking at injustices and observing what's going on around you. You can choose to either close an eye to it or to really speak on it and let your observations become a part of your art. And that, like Panji was saying, that in a sense that allows, people to see the alternatives, the options, to speak truth into things and speak truth to power, and it becomes a big responsibility. You know what I mean? So music, production, creating, collaboration, all of that has always played a big role in, I would say, the concept of resistance, so to speak. You know what I mean? We'll go further into kind of, I'm sure as the conversation develops, we'll get into that. But from day one, it's always been a form of resistance, is like to kind of set my identity in stone, and go against the grain. And that in itself, I think, is the purest form of resistance you can experience. Yeah.
Panji, you were one of the people who started this whole hip life thing. Back then, it wasn't really in vogue. Being a pioneer of that genre of music, from the onset, what actually motivated you to go into that direction? And also, what were some of the challenges that you encountered, trying to establish it as a genre?
Well, I think that, there was a hip-hop movement before we came along, kind of symbolized by J.W. Ambole, and also every Ochami in every court in Ghana. So we were simply extending an existing tradition. But for me, the reason why hip life was important is because until the 90s, when we came along, there were almost no artists in Ghana, with the exception of the Anomaly, who were below the age of 40 or 45. And I felt that hip hop and hip life gave young people a voice which we had never heard. So part of my interest in hip hop and in hip life was simply to give young people a voice, which in the environment I came from, being Ghana, they had never had before. So, 30 years later, I can debate whether, giving young people a voice is a good thing or a bad thing, because young people haven't thought many things through. But I think that in itself is a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing to say whatever you feel, whether it's correct or wrong. It's what you feel. Whether it's correct or wrong for anybody else, and even in fact, whether it's correct or wrong for you tomorrow. Today, that is how you are feeling, therefore it's valid. Tomorrow, be brave and accept and change your mind and do something else. But I felt it was important that young people had the opportunity to speak. And so for me, getting involved in the hip life movement, yes, sure. Also, another part of it was, I was living in England at the time, and hip hop was a very important part of the Cultural Revolution. From the early 90s, you say, hip hop is the black people's CNN, because it was through hip hop that I discovered what was happening in Chicago or in New York or in Los Angeles or in Atlanta or in New Orleans. That would be relevant to me when I went there, because when I went to Los Angeles, I was going to hang around in the environments, and hip hop is what prepared me for what I was going to see and feel and experience. So hip hop was a very important means of communication, especially when nothing of that form existed. So for me, in part, yes, I was thinking about how do we give young people a voice. I myself was a young person at the time. I was older than most of the people who were, yes, because, say Mensa, I know Mensa Mensa was 14 years old when, and I was probably 28 or 29. Hey, our difference big like so.
Hey, why? Reduce the numbers.
No, the talk said the gap between me and you big. That means you are young, you are fresh.
Make no talk
Fresh
the numbers
boy.
too much.
Fresh boy. And I have to admit, Mensa is one of the artists I admire the most because, you know, Mensa has explored so many different perspectives in his music. You know, you don't have to be one way. Not, you know, you don't have to don't let your music define you. You know, define your music. Yeah. And I think Mensa is one of the few people who has done that in this space, you know, and, you know, explore many things which I can hear from the music are important to him. And I think musicians, you should make music about things that matter to you so that, you know, you can involve yourself in it. You can be passionate about it. So, I mean, with the hip life movement, it was a counter-revolution. Hip hop was a revolution in America, and hip hop was a reaction. And, you know, I've always been fascinated by reactions, even though living in Ghana, we don't react as much as a black man living in England or a black man living in America has to react. You know, we are more proactive. When I'm living in England or America, I'm reactive because I know I'm living in a hostile environment. You know, so it's, I mean, I felt hip hop simply created an alternative viewpoint to what Nana Mpedu was doing. I loved what Nana Mpedu was doing. I loved what Black Chinese was doing. I liked what the musicians of the time, Martin Kansa, Slim Young, I liked what all of them were doing, but I felt that there was an alternative, and I wanted to create the space, or I wanted to help stimulate an environment in which the alternative could be heard. So
So Mensa, looking at you and the kind of stuff that you've been doing over time, some of your music goes to address social issues, even offline when you are on Twitter or social media, you use your platform to do a lot of advocacy. My question is, pursuing that kind of art, are there rewards in them? And if there are, what are some of them? If there are not, what keeps you going?
I think the biggest reward one can receive from, you know, as you say, advocacy or even speaking truth on matters and involving myself in, you know, speaking on injustices and things like that, is that when I go to bed at night, I can sleep, you know, and not really kind of question my integrity and what I'm contributing, you know, towards with my art. You know, I think that's the biggest reward, to be able to live with yourself, you know, and if you have a conscience, it's important. And this is not to kind of invalidate other musicians doing other things. I think there's enough space for everyone to touch on different things and still coexist. The other thing would be that I'm using, you know, my platform to just allow others to exist on there. You know, it's like, I also, I mean, as much as I like to speak on things, I also have to be careful that I don't start championing things in a way that it's counterproductive for two things. That I start speaking on things that I'm not fully informed on. But I mean, when you know an injustice, you know, like, you know, when you're speaking on homophobia and speaking on treatment towards people with disabilities or racism and things like that. I mean, but what's most important is that I'm able to use my platform to allow others who can speak more proficiently on these issues to also to exist on there. You know, the second danger could also be that you know, it ends up becoming about me. You know, and that's something that's, you know, I have to be careful about, because that's, you know, that responsibility doesn't mean that I become the all-knowing artist who kind of, you know, so there has to be a balance in there. But for me, the biggest reward is that, hey, listen, I've got this small thing here that, you know, I've got going on here. You can come onto this space, speak on it, and allow us to have conversations or even build or create art around it and so on and so forth to just help spread the word. And that really is really fulfilling. It can get lonely at the top, in the sense that, you know, it can cost you, you know, it can cost you, especially when you're in an environment like Ghana where it's like, Charlie, when you will give me the next hit and, we want to dance and Charlie, hey, that your flow, this, that, it's like, give us more of this and that. And it's like, come on, man, Charlie, there's things that I want to tackle. And also, people are afraid to associate with you because of your politics, because you will call them out on things. So it's like, and when it comes to, what's the word, sponsorships and endorsements and things like that, people either don't want to touch you, or they start pulling away, or they start giving you these strict guidelines. If you don't, then we can't work with you, and so on and so forth. So it kind of, then you have to start, functioning as not only an artist, but also as an entrepreneur, as a business person, to keep your business afloat, to help make it, sustainable and so on and so forth. But if at the end of the day, I can go to bed and sleep and snore and just feel free that I've spoken my truths and I can get on with, what I need to get on with, I think that's the most important thing, being able to live with yourself. The rest will always figure itself out, you see. Yeah, man, I mean, we've had, you're asking me what the rewards are, and I seem to, maybe I don't want to kind of delve too much into like what the negatives are or the difficulties are, but there's been times where it's like people have pulled away because we've spoken on LGBTQIA plus rights, or we've spoken on corruption in the country and we are with a different party and so on and so forth. And it's like, actually, if you're free and you can sleep at night there, I think that's me, my sleep, they hear me.
But sometimes I feel like our creatives, the artists within the Ghanaian space, seem a bit detached. I don't know, when there are certain important issues, whether political, whether social, whatsoever, you hear a lot of them being very silent, just leaving the fight or the conversation to be led by just a handful of people. In your estimation, what could probably be some of the reasons why they don't want to indulge in it? Is it because there's a fear for them to lose whatever incentives that they are getting? Is it that they being silent, keep them safe or allow them to sleep at night? Or there is a bigger phobia out there?
Well, I think Mensa explained it quite well when he said, because you take an alternative viewpoint from what is considered to be normal, people then think, hey, you understand, this person is bad, or this person is mad, or there is something wrong with this person. And, we are human beings. I expect 99% of the people in the world to disagree with me over 90 or 99% of issues. It doesn't mean that we do not have many things in common. Okay. But I think when it comes to the artists, really the fear, Mensa said, you're in an environment where you are taught to obey without questioning. This is what we are taught to do in school. This is what we are taught to do, in, let's say, in the modern environment. Nobody wants the system to change because they are entrenched in it. So we have this fear of, if you rock the boat, you will get thrown off the boat. And it's true. Mensa was, even though he was a good academic student and he could have been useful to the school that he was attending in many ways, simply the fact that he is showing the people in his class or in his school that there is an alternative to becoming a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, which is what the school is training us for, because the schools don't teach us to be artists or to be musicians or to be anything. Now you have a student who has got to that point on their own, they become a dangerous threat. So I think very few musicians want to be seen as a threat because they think it is going to threaten their revenue streams. And, sometimes there are many musicians whose financial existence, is kind of hovering around the, the borderline, and therefore they think, look, I can't even afford to lose one city. So even though I might be passionate about this matter, Charlie, let me just close my mouth. Technician, the battery is dying. Oh, the battery on my...
Yeah, could it also be because of our political history? Compared to other countries like South Africa, like even Nigeria next door, where, time passed during the independence struggles, or even post-independence. For Nigeria, we have the likes of Fela Kuti, who was championing human rights issues, and we have people like Ken Saro-Wiwa.
But you saw the price he paid.
Of course. So my question is it because we never had people of such standing?
No, we had Nkrumah, we don't need Fela. So Nkrumah was as... and Fela took a lot of inspiration from Nkrumah. And yet I honestly believe that we need... my generation needs to pass, the next generation needs to go, and the generation needs to come who hear of Nkrumah's strength and ideology, but they've forgotten the pain that Nkrumah was forced to go through, so that they will not fear to attempt it. Because people of my generation, nobody wants to be Nkrumah. They know the price Nkrumah paid. Nobody's ready to die for Ghana. So we are not going to see an Nkrumah in my lifetime, I don't think. However, when we, the foolish ones who are not willing to die, are gone, maybe people will come along who will look to Nkrumah and say, look, what Nkrumah did is incredible. And I believe that I might be able to do something like that. I mean, if you look at Nkrumah's background and everything, it was simply his imagination and his belief in himself that enabled him to do what he did. And also not being afraid. Nkrumah was a very fearless man. So I think that the problem right now is people of my generation. We saw Sankara, we saw him shot down. We saw Gaddafi, we saw him shot down. We saw Nkrumah, we saw him shot down. So it's like when we think of standing for something, death is never very far away from what we associate it with. And for the most part, we are human beings. We're afraid of death. So. My name is Death. So ever since I was a young child, I'm blessed. I had to accept myself. Every human being, you've got to accept yourself. Me, I'm Death. So I had to accept death at a very early age. And by losing my fear of death, I was able to approach many things from a much more open perspective. So, but everything has disadvantages. Even though I embraced myself and I said, okay, I'm not afraid of death. You can become so obsessed with not being afraid of death that you forget not to be afraid of life. Yeah. So everything has, I think there's a part of my life where even though I was so obsessed with not being afraid of death that I forgot not to be afraid of life. So it's, those are the two extremes. And sometimes in our quest to make people aware of the alternatives, we ourselves, we go too far and we get lost. I warned you. So, I think fear and most of the fear is financial. If you squeeze someone into a tight position, they're not getting royalties from Gamro, there's no sponsorship, there's pressure on the artists. Charlie, they are going to buckle down and try to survive. They are, the first thing that they lose is their courage. Because Charlie, a hungry man doesn't, you've got to focus down and make sure you can eat before you start thinking about something else. So I think fear is the greatest thing. And yes, our political system has kind of always been hostile towards truth tellers. Doesn't matter whether it's journalists, doesn't matter whether it's, and this is across, it's across the whole continent. So I don't blame anybody. I don't think just because you're an artist, you have to die for your art or you have to die for your people. No, you don't have to die for anything. So I don't think we should put that onus on any artist just because you're an artist. My bank manager has never thought about dying for me or for anybody in Ghana. It will never cross his mind. Yeah, he's a bank manager. So why should Mensa have to think about, dying for his fellow Ghanaians. He shouldn't have to. But he's thought about it, and I don't know. Charlie, are you willing to go?
No, dear. I've seen that life is sweet, man. So.
and we all born, Charlie, we can't go anywhere.
Yeah, my children will miss me. I mean, it's, and just to kind of add to what Panji is saying, it's like you have to understand the power of music. Like all these political leaders and whatnot, they know the power of the arts, which is why every time they come into power or they're looking to come into power, they employ artists, musicians to sing songs of praise for them or to kind of get them onto their side. Or even when they're in power and there's a lot of injustices in their reign, they'd like to, employ musicians to kind of buffer
their campaigns.
Exactly, to kind of to justify their presence. And so you understand that there's a lot of power in that, but the same strength also is like a lot of musicians also, are drawn to that because it's a meal ticket, and it's like if you go and speak against the government or speak against the status quo, then you're possibly cutting, or what they say, biting the hand that's possibly going to feed you. So it's rough, especially in Ghana, where it's like we don't have institutions and foundations and support and funding for musicians. It's like you have art, but you must also eat, and it's like the responsibility as an artist is a lot just to stay afloat.
So how can you build a critical mass of people from the arts, various art platforms, so that, just like you said, when it comes to political campaigning, they fish out for some of them to campaign for them, but right after they win in power, whenever you raise any suggestion to them, they don't want to hear it. So how can we build a critical mass where we can have that interface between creatives and the government or people in power towards achieving a greater goal?
I think, once again, like Panji said, I don't think the onus is on us to really, come and change policy and, build. I mean, what I can do is speak on things. What I can do is try and, not even like to educate my listeners or whatever, but kind of, put things to them to make them, to allow them to think critically, to question things and to look deeper into things. My work as a musician is to allow my listeners, or even as a creator, as like whoever interacts with my art, to be able to use their imagination to think beyond what is before their very eyes, because for the most part, your imagination is actually stronger than the reality. That's how we create new realities and alternate realities. So I don't know the answer to that, to create a critical mass, but all we can do is continue speaking on things. And, the problem, I think, is much deeper or goes further beyond just, us creating, is how we're educated in school, how we're taught to think, how religion has infiltrated our capability of thinking critically, because unfortunately it stops us from questioning things in an intense way, to think of alternatives. So, but at the moment it seems to work for the intentions of politicians, and so there's no way that's going to change. But once we start looking into our education system and how we're educating young people, how these external influences, these post-colonial influences are still, very much a big part of our activities in Ghana. It's like I really don't know. I don't have the answer. So what I can do is just continue to, speak on things and just allow people to come and use my platform and collaborate with young people and allow people to come into young creators to come into my space. I mean, this is something that Panji has done in a very profound way, actually. He's always giving us the space. You know, without Panji, FOKM Boys wouldn't have achieved a quarter of what we've been able to achieve when it comes to Cosmic Money 1 and 2, and just really standing behind us and guiding us and showing us the ropes as to how to reach certain corners and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of community support that comes into play, but as a musician, I feel like some of us are already doing more than we ought to be doing in this environment, but yeah, that's what I'll say.
And to say something, you know, because you have Mensa and Kubolo, it doesn't mean that Mensa and Kubolo is between them alone, they can address every issue in Ghana, and therefore every other artist has been left off the hook.
Yeah.
No, I really don't think. And yesterday or a couple of days ago, Shatta Wale put his voice behind the LGBT argument, and I was touched. I know, that is what is in his mind, but to say it and to think that I can say this, and my audience or my fan base, who, judging from what we are seeing around us, 80 or 90% of them will disagree with me. But I am going to say it anyway because I want to be on the right side of history, or I want to say what I believe is right. I really respect it when I know an artist is possibly saying something that he knows 90% or 80% of his audience is going to disagree with. Every artist is afraid of alienating their audience, but even more powerful is enriching the lives of your audience or your fans or your listeners. And I think that simply because Shatta Wale, with his influence, can say, look, me too, I don't believe this bill makes any sense. You understand what I mean? Then there are a large number of people who will think, hey, Shatta Wale, people's president, whatever happens to be, things like this, then maybe I shouldn't be as vociferous as I'm being. So it's, like Mensa says, it's not up to the artist to solve the problem on, on a micro or macro scale. All that our job is to do is to think critically about the life and the space that we are in, decide what inspires us, and try to use that inspiration to create a wonderful work of art. The primary purpose of a work of art is not to educate anybody, create awareness, do this. No, it's art. It's just to make people happy. Or, it's a work of art. It's a song. So you can't... I think a big problem arises when somebody says, oh, me, I'm a political artist, or me, I'm a conscious artist. Sometimes I listen to some of the conscious music and I want to vomit. Conscious, what's conscious? Everything you can go too far. So to me, it's not... the problem is when we become dogmatic. You know what I mean? And so, to me, conscious is as big a problem as any other form, because it's like, okay, yes, me, I'm a conscious man, and you people are not conscious. So for a start, you are approaching your audience from a position of superiority. You know what I mean? And it's offensive. So I don't think artists have, it's not artists have to achieve their primary purpose first, which is to create a wonderful work of art which is inspired by what they are thinking or what they are feeling. So if as an artist you think and feel deep, you will create deep and profound music. It's as simple as that. I don't think, if as an artist you make a conscious effort to try and be, righteous, or to try and be, whatever, Hotep or Alpha or whatever you do, you are going to fail, because you are now no longer allowing your feelings to lead you, but rather a conscious decision you have made, hey, me, I'm this kind of artist. You miss thousands of opportunities around you, and you end up becoming one way and one track and boring. And, I don't think, sure, art is a very powerful tool, but it is only powerful if it is art. If it is not art, it loses its power. It's the same with music. If a song is popular and 100 million people are exposed to it. So if 100 million people are exposed to it, it's 100 million people have the potential to be touched by that song. If a song contains a message and only 3 people hear it, you know what I mean? The message is lost to some extent.
Exactly.
So for me, the first thing is to reach your audience and, you know, keep them with you. You know, make them happy, make them enjoy what you are doing. Let them love your music. Let them, you know, let them feel you. It's not about education and awareness and all these things. They are secondary. They are just byproducts of the way that people feel. You know, Mensah's music is a reflection of his character and his personality and his tolerance and his humanism. It is going to reflect in his music. He didn't make a conscious decision. Maybe I'm lying. Charlie Mensah, if I did lie, tell me. I don't think Mensah got up one day and said, oh, Charlie, me, I'm going to be a conscious musician. I'm going to do this. No, you know, he's simply reflecting the human being that he is. And if you don't reflect the human being that you are in your music or in your art, it is very difficult for other people to relate to it. You know, so it's, yes, but it's too easy to get lost in the purpose of the art. The purpose of the art is the art itself. You know, art doesn't need a function outside of the fact that this is a work of art. I've expressed myself in it. You know, so we shouldn't get lost. It's very easy to get lost and then, you know, but we should be artists first. We are not psychologists. We are not clinical philosophers. We are not, you know, those things. Those are not our jobs, you know, and we shouldn't obsess about them. Sure, they are a part of our lives, and they're a part of how we think and how we feel, and they're a part of the changes that we want to see in our society. But that is not the purpose for which we live. I know the purpose for which Mensah and I live is our children. You know, that is what really motivates us on a day-to-day. You know, the art and everything, it's a life. I won't say it's a job. It's not a lifestyle. Yes, it's a part of our lives. But, you know, it's. I know, for instance, that Mensah's daughters are more important to him than many, many other things. You know, and sometimes it seems as if those other things are more important than the things which drive those other things. And what I'm saying is, you know, we shouldn't look at, you know, don't look at the hole in the mirror. You know, let's look at the ball that made a hole through that, or let's look at what made the hole in that glass. You know, you see a broken glass, it didn't break by itself. Something happened. Somebody kicked a ball, somebody threw a stone, somebody fired a catapult. I'm saying we should look at that part of the equation and not just the broken window, which is what we see, but it's the processes around it and what led to it.
Talking about broken glasses and stuff, Panji, you are noted for being able to sell the art that you create, that is the music, beyond Ghana. And I've been wondering how you managed to do that, because if you look at the conversation, there's always this talk about African arts now dominating, finding itself in certain places, whether it's paintings or hosting arts festivals, or whether this whole Afropop, Afrobeat explosion, getting recognition and so on and so forth. But then again, you talk to others, then they find it very difficult to break into some of these spaces. I want to find out from you, how do you navigate through those things, through those bottlenecks to get your art exposed?
Maybe Mensah should answer this question. He's the one going to places I've never been to.
I mean, look, Panji, I think we can both we can share this one 50-50, because, you know, through your expertise and what you've done before, you know, you pioneered this thing and made us, you know, think, well, okay, we can do this. But I think the secret, it's not a secret really, it's that you have to try and be as original as possible and really bring your truest experiences from your environment. The thing is that a lot of us musicians are trying to copy what is already out there and what has already worked. But if you're copying something that's already out there on radio, then why should they take the copy instead of the original. So what we're doing is just tapping into ourselves and being as introspective and intuitive to what's around us as much as possible and making it work. And then approaching it with a real dedication and a work ethic and a will to spend time on things, to develop things, and to research on things. And so for me, it's like, back in the day, we were all doing the yo-yo rapping slangs. We all wanted to be 50 Cent and all those kind of things. But it's like, why would anybody be interested in me if there's already a 50 Cent? So now, and this is why I'm jumping from one thing to the next, but I'll make the connection. Is like, This is why hip life music was so impactful, because we were all listening to Yankee raps, and then all of a sudden we're hearing raps sounding as cool as the ones that's coming from the Yankee and overseas, but it's in the local language, and we're sampling, Young Ponsa, High Life, and Nana KJC and all these things, and bringing them and reinventing these things and making them so cool that it sounds incredibly fresh to the whole world, and everybody wants to be a part of it. So it's just about really being able to create original material and content that is really true to you. If it's an honest content, I think that's where it begins. And then you back it up with the, a real work ethic and the dedication and things like that. And I think that is one way to, at least for your product to be ready to be exported, so to speak, And we didn't make our music with the intention of, we're making music that can be exported. It really was about the authenticity of what we're making and let it kind of go wherever it is meant to go. We didn't make cause of money because we knew that the West would be interested in the story of two young boys in Accra, speaking pidgin and rapping, doing a musical. We did the story because we knew that friends who grew up with us would identify with this story and laugh with it. When I did Number One Mango Streets, really what it was just talking about my story as a young boy, as a child growing up in Dansoman, and my experiences and the time I spent in my room messing around and things like that. And that's really what makes the connection. So it's about really tapping into yourself, into your environment, and creating authentic content. And then the rest is really just pushing it as much as possible and finding the right angles or connections and so on and so forth. But that comes with a lot of hard work. I mean, we've been doing this for two decades now, and we're only getting started. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? And that's the fun part of it, is that because our focus is not on how are we going to export this, but it's just about how do we develop ourselves, how do we keep growing as musicians. I'm picking up a new instrument. I'm trying different things and trying different ways of singing and so on and so forth. So it's like every year I have something to look forward to. And just like anybody who worked, let's use Panji's example as somebody who works in a bank. You start as a clerk, and then you're like a area manager, then regional manager, and so on and so forth. For us, it's just about really just the growth in the music and tapping into ourselves and looking for new things, creative things and imagining things, and just keep doing it to the best of your ability. I think once you have the mindset of, Charlie, I want to export my music, like Panji said, it's like, it's in the art itself. It's not about the intention of the art or, what it's like. It's about the authenticity of what you're creating that will allow you even the first opportunities for it to be heard in other spaces,
I mean, I can really agree with that. I think what I have always looked for is something which I had never seen before.
Okay.
So anybody who is being authentic and genuine to themselves will be something I've never seen before, because I've never met this person. And here they are expressing themselves honestly and truthfully. It's going to be the first time I've seen this. And I mean, it's... I have to admit, I struggled a lot the first 10, 12 years, because even though I changed the name of the company to Pigeon Music in 1997. And I thought just by saying, okay, look, Pigeon Music, people would be able to understand where I'm coming from. Yes, sure, we started with Hip Life. Of course, in the beginning with Hip Life, Cree is where we went to.
Yeah.
But after a while, I realized that Cree was a step. But actually, for us in Ghana, Pidgin is the most universal language we have. So, sure, yes, Hip Life, but then I got to a point where I realized this has got to be about Pidgin, not just Pidgin, the language, but the Pidgin approach to life. So, if I'm making a Pidgin building, I can use, mud at the bottom. I can use windows from Australia. I can use a roof design from Canada. It just means taking anything from anywhere and putting it together. Yes, and expressing it my own way. That also helps to make you original. It doesn't mean you can take influences from anywhere in the world, but so long as you make them your own, you are not imitating anymore. You are advancing. You are pushing the envelope further. So I think, like with what Mensa said, I have always tried to work with musicians who I knew you can't find what they are doing anywhere else in the world. Yeah. Or you can't find this, you won't find this in Kingston, you won't find this in Rio de Janeiro, you won't find this in New York. So if you want it, you have to come to Ghana, where it comes from. So FOKM Boys, yes, it's a Ghanaian, it's a West African, it's an African, it's a global phenomenon, but everything is built around a very specific identity, which is unique to Ghana, and it's very unique to Ghana, so you can only get it here. I mean, far from, people think, I always think global, but actually it's exactly the opposite. When I released King Aisoba's album, I didn't do a launching in Accra. I went to his hometown, in Bolgatanga and Bongosonye, and that is where we launched the album. And
Why
we started.
Was that important?
Pardon?
How important was that?
It's very important because we are planting the seed where it comes from. And I wanted the popularity of the album to grow from his hometown. So before I Want to See You, My Father became popular in Accra, King Aisoba had hits in his hometown. They were different songs, but, and the moment you have the support of your community, it gives you a lot of confidence to represent that community in a wider space. So you cannot get up and say, oh, I'm going international. Until you have the support of your local community, it's like you need their validation in order to represent them. So you have to get that first. So in everything I have done, I have always tried to, the only place I make the effort is to try and get this song or this artist or this concept anchored in the community that they come from. From then on, everything will grow on its own. Like Mensa will say, yes, he might be popular all over the world, but if he's walking around in Dansoman, the people see him and they know, this is the person who represents us. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yes, so Mensa has their endorsement to take Dansoman to the world. What if the people in Dansoman think, oh, that Mensa, that Yankee, Brofosem, nonsense he's doing, it doesn't represent us. And then suddenly Mensa is lost on an island. There's nothing beneath his feet anymore. There's nobody holding him up. There's nobody pushing him forward. So I really think everything, yes, maybe think global, but I think global by trying to make everything as specific and as local as possible. So I never try to go outside. I'm always trying to go in deeper and deeper inside. I'm trying to get closer and closer to the source. Everything else it will happen. But, genetically, I also have a small advantage. Me, I'm half caste. When I'm in Ghana, my father's side of the family, they will reject me. They say, hey, you are Mubruni. If I go to Germany, my mother's side of the family to reject, hey, you are Bibini. So it forces me to actually, it allows me to think as an outsider, even when I'm in Ghana. And when I'm in Germany, I'm an outsider. I was born in London. When I'm in London, I'm an outsider. Me, I'm an outsider everywhere I go. however far for it, boo-hoo, don't cry for me. It's a beautiful thing. It allows me to look at everything as though I'm not involved in it. So I can look at things dispassionately. I might see something, or, I can see somebody is trying to drive a knife into my heart, but, I just ignore it. I don't feel it, and it's gone. So in that moment, by allowing that person to drive that knife into your heart, you learn a lot more about them than they learn about you. Yeah. So I'm in a position where I'm always learning about everybody and everything around me, because even though I'm part of it, there is a part of me that will always feel like the outsider, and therefore I'm always learning, I'm always studying, I'm always observing, I'm always trying to identify what makes this situation unique, what makes this situation feel so good, what makes this situation kind of not so good. Yes. So
there's always an avenue for you to look at the opportunities.
Yes, and I'm always the outsider, so I have an advantage which, sure, I have many disadvantages, but I also have an advantage which allows me to think critically about art especially, or about life, or about society, about people. Because you can imagine there's conflict. What my mother believes is right and what my father believes is right, they come from two different cultures. They are never going to agree all the time. But what about me, the child? I can choose my mother's side is right, or my father's side is right, or I can decide, Charlie, both of them are full of shit. Let me find my own way. Yeah. So basically culture is like that. You've got to lose your reverence for culture in order to study it critically. So if you revere culture, how are you going to look at it critically? If you revere religion, how are you going to look at it critically? If you revere politics, how are you going to look at it critically? So for me, the greatest thing about the fucking boys is their irreverence. Yeah. Yes. Because they're irreverent about everything, nothing is precious, nothing is sacred. It gives them a perspective that very few artists I've seen very few artists explore in my lifetime, because they respect everything too much. It's like, hey, we can't talk about this. So, hey, he's a big man, this, that, But the moment you lose that reverence for all these, and I mean, why do we have so much reverence for, not to mention any name or mention any system or mention any religion. Why should we have reverence for them? And yet our education and our society forces us to put certain things on a pedestal above us. To me, all those things are below me. If I can't look at them from up looking down, I'm never going to understand them.
Definitely.
So I think we as human beings shouldn't put foolish man-made systems we created above our heads. We should look at them as them being below us, and so that when things are wrong, we can address them and try and correct them. Yeah. But the moment we start worshipping a man-made system, it's going to start oppressing us. And that is what we are seeing. Yeah. The systems we created in Ghana, post-colonialism, some of them are even more oppressive than the systems the colonial masters put in place. But if the colonial master had tried to do that, we'd say, hey, we are not going to let you do this. Yeah. No, but because now it is us doing it to ourselves, we cannot identify the enemy.
Sure.
We are the enemy, and so we can't identify ourselves. But, I think things are happening in Ghana which we would have resisted under colonialism, because we would have realized that, no, this is this thing coming from here. It's like the, unnatural carnal knowledge, those foolish British laws that they brought. They've been in the Ghana legal system for 50, 60, 100 years. They have never been enforced because we ourselves realize that these are foolish laws. You know what I mean? So it's not as if the foolish laws have not been there, and these laws were imposed upon us by the British. The Ghanaians simply decided this is a foolish white man's law. How can you tell human being this, that, this, that, this, that? So therefore, we simply ignored them, right? And that, for me, is a sensible thing to do. But now we are coming to the point where, because we cannot identify an alien oppressor, and the oppressor is within our midst. In fact, the oppressor is our own thinking.
Yeah.
We have no resistance to, really a steamroller of oppression that is rolling our way. We don't even see it coming, because It's that proverb about, you know, the trees were all voting for the axe because they saw that the axe had a wooden handle, so they thought the axe was...
It's one of them.
Yes, they thought the axe is one of them. So that is the situation I am seeing us in now. We have carried the Kolo mentality on our head, and we now use our colonialism to acquire a sense of superiority over our fellow Ghanaians who do not have that sickness. So we who are sick rather think we are superior to those who are healthy.
Yeah.
You know, how do we change this? The change will not come from within the educational system, because the educational system is the primary beneficiary of what is here in place. So the change will have to come from the periphery. And the periphery is where art, you know, music, imagery, film, that is where we are. So, you know, we are throwing the missiles. We know eventually, Charlie, the school will burn down. Especially at this school.
That place will burn out first.
Very soon we'll be taking questions from the audience. If you have a question, kindly be patient. We'll pass the mic around for you to ask our panel members. But Mensa, talking about perspective, you come from a diverse artsy family. Your uncle is a filmmaker. One of your uncles was a fashion designer. Your cousin is an actor. You are a musician. You born in Ghana. You've lived in Ghana. You are also in the UK. You've traveled around the world. So my question is, with all these experiences, with your diverse background, and the arts that you are pursuing, does it come with a certain level of understanding, a certain perspective that only people like you and those with certain experience see, that some of our guys here don't see? And how do you interface with them, what the conversation, for them to also understand or see what you are seeing?
Right. I mean, yes, indeed. I come from a family of creatives, both my mother and my father's side. But you also have to remember that they didn't interfere or step up to educate me on how to do things and so on and so forth. Actually, what this meant for me was that I was under a lot of pressure not to be doing it because my other family members are doing it, so me too, I'm doing some. And also, if I did it, I had to do it properly so that, just to kind of keep up with the quote-unquote legacy of sorts, which is not something I really care too much about. But I would say that one advantage is that because I grew up around creatives, and actually the non-popular or famous people in my family are actually some of the most creative people, like my brothers who are not pursuing the arts as careers are my biggest influences. They introduced me to playing instruments, to listening to some of the best music, to watching some of the best films or reading some of the best books and so on and so forth. So I would say that my advantage was that I was allowed to explore and to also be critical about things. I was allowed to really like revolt or to resist and to ask questions and be like, oh, why are you making me do this? And I would get an answer, even though my parents, in one sense, also sucked at adulting. I was also, allowed to really exist, and rebel and make mistakes and hit my head against the wall and come back and, and try again. And I think a big part of it is also that in my nature, I'm quite observant. So I like to watch people and watch things, and that character can be a flaw, but also the benefit of that is that, it allows me to really delve into things and start going into like rabbit holes and, just exploring things and ideas, and also to daydream. I think that's something that artists should always allow themselves to do, to just really just dream like incredulous, imagine like unbelievable things, and then use that somehow to create your art, and that's, I don't know if I fully understand your question, but, I was allowed to do a lot of that. And as a creative in Ghana, I don't know. We are also in an environment where, because being an artist can sometimes be a means to escaping certain struggles and poverty, and moving out of certain social classes and so on and so forth. We are forced to not really push ourselves, but to just keep repeating the thing that seems to be working, and just everybody's doing the same thing so that we have a chance, and so on and so forth. So for me, I would say actually the idea is to push the envelope as much as possible, to explore as much, to break the rules, to challenge the status quo. I remember when I was young, somebody was telling me, "Oh, you cannot make a song with a bass line that has a reverb on it." I don't know if this makes anything, like a bass line that has like an echo on it, and it's like that. And so because of that, I was like, this is the one thing that I'm actually going to do, because why not? And this, I know this is like a random experiment, but an example, but that's really what it's about. It's just about just pushing and discovering things for yourself when it comes to if you're into literacy, if you're reading, if you're writing, if it's art, whatnot. It's about just pushing yourself, out of what you're used to, what you're comfortable with. Yeah. Exactly, you know what I mean? And that's really all I can say about it. But I don't know if that answers your question properly.
Yeah, it does. Now we turn to the audience. Any question to ask our panelists? Is there mic? Okay, we will come back to you.
On the background to resistance. Well, praise resistance. We have to have something to resist. If you walk on a cement floor with spread okra water on it, you ain't going to resist nothing. You flounder and fall. So while we resist us, we should remember that we should also honor the things that stand in our way, that force us to resist.
No, I don't hear too much of.
Well, he spoke about being grateful to the systems which give us something to fight against. And I was going to say, we have enough. We want them to reduce. There are too many. There's enough, more than enough inspiration.
Yeah.
In regard to what you discussed about the need to be irreverent about our approaches to how we speak about culture, religion, politics, right? The need for us.
Is it up?
Saying that we need to be irreverent about how we approach these things, right? Is there anywhere a line to be drawn between being irreverent yet having some respect for some
no respect, please. No respect.
And I'm asking this because in order for, as you say, things like to develop a critical mass, right? We're coming from a place where, as you said, a lot of things we've grown up not challenging a lot of things, right? So do you have any concern at all about the fact that if you're approaching things in an irreverent, destructive way, is it of any, not destructive?
Irreverent.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you're approaching things in an irreverent way, do you have any concern that the masses to whom you are trying to speak may perceive your irreverence as insulting in any way? Is there any concern of that when you create art?
No. For myself, how far is too far, not far enough? One Love said something. The one you think I've gone too far, I'm now going even further. So we come from an environment where we haven't even been allowed to ask questions. You understand? Why didn't God create Mary first? Hey, you are blaspheming. So the system had no respect for us. So we have no respect for the system. In fact, the system is an insult to our intelligence. So,
yeah.
So in order to, the irreverence is actually not irreverence. There is, the system we are resisting never treated any of us with respect, never had any consideration for our humanity, for our culture, for our feelings. So when we fight against that system, or when we question that system, I don't care if you think I'm insulting you personally. You have insulted me for the last 55 years. Hey, Mensa, sorry. 34 years of my life. So, we cannot afford, how do you respect somebody who doesn't respect you?
Yeah.
So I understand the point you are making, that an alternate view can be misconstrued as a personal attack. A lot of people think, many Christians think because, I have zero respect for Christianity, I'm attacking them personally. No, I'm not. I have a lot of sympathy for everybody who is looking for God. I have no sympathy for the idiots who are selling us a 2,000-year-old newspaper and pretending that this is God. It's not my fault I went to school and they made me stupid enough to believe in this book. It's not my fault. So I feel, it's not I feel sorry, I empathize with the followers of every religion. I'm with you. We are all looking for God. I'm on your side. You understand? So if I criticize the churches, I'm criticizing the churches because the churches want to make fools of all of us.
Exactly. I just wanted to just to add to what Panji is saying. It's like when you speak of irreverence, it's not like you are just going about just like disrespecting everything because, hey, I don't care or whatnot. Irreverence really is about looking at the things that are blocking you from existing completely, that we as human beings in a community or a society are giving too much power, giving too much respect, that you can't question those things, that you can't ask why those things are interrupting you or are interfering with your being or your existence. And it's like nothing is too high up there for us to question it. Nothing is too high up there for us to make a joke about, to bring it down to a human level. And that's really what irreverence is about, so that everything can be touched on. And when we with Fucking Boys, for instance, we used humor because we were able to take anything that you took too seriously and make a joke about it, so that you can realize that it's not that serious, and it can be questioned. And so we speak on everything. But what that allows also is that when you give irreverence to things, it allows us to now have conversations about things, to see things on a human level. Like, why is it that this government that's out there, I'm not saying this government, a government that's out there to look out for me and to make sure, for my welfare, for my well-being, is the same thing that's oppressing me so much. But don't speak on the government because they are then painful and so on and so forth. No, actually, I want to question them because now they're stopping my mother from getting the healthcare that she needs, or my auntie who's going to go to Kolebu because she got pricked by a needle and I was going to die from tetanus. Something basic like that. You can't speak on it. Yes, you can. Everything can be spoken on, from homophobia to religion to governance to education to whoever that uncle in the house who's abusing the little child, or a penalty, you don't speak on it. That's what really irreverence is about. It's about speaking on things that we have given too much power and therefore feel like you can't touch on. And that's it's some of the most important things you can pursue as an artist, really.
To add to that, I would like to say the only reason why a system can abuse us is because we have given it too much power. So if we want to stop the abuse, the first thing to do is to take the power away from that institution. So, you know, do I want to dismantle every structure and every system which is in place? No, not at all. I just want to fight against the ones which I feel are oppressing me or people that I love. So it is only the oppressive structures that we are most irreverent about, or we are most dismissive of. Because if we erode its power, it will, sooner or later, that structure will lose the ability to oppress us. So that is the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, take it.
Thank you. I appreciate the work of Mensah and Kubolo, especially the first time I heard Domire was when they parodied it in All Men Are Godless. And it was very funny when I listened to it. And then when they made a combat between Count Dracula and Kweku Anansi, it was the most insightful comparison I'd ever seen in my life. And when I saw that these were people who were using pidgin to produce such incisive criticism of our culture, and then to, you know, establish a kind of sense of humor, I felt like, okay, I identify with these people because this kind of irreverent humor is the way we boys, we talk about everything. When boys start talking about many things in our cycle, there are no holds barred, right? Yeah. We just talk about everything. Things that we can't say on Twitter, or we can't say maybe in person or in front of the older people that we see. When we boys meet, this is how we talk about them. And there's a lot of insights to be mined from that place. And so I'm very happy that there are people like you out there pushing this kind of sensitivity in the Ghanaian space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jerome.
You know, well, before we started this thing, I was so prepared that I even cleaned my bathroom and put on perfume. And then the final thing was that I was going to wear a mask before, even though I'm home alone.
Okay. I think, Panji, you spoke about being authentic. You spoke about being authentic as an artist. It's about the art, and it has to reflect who you are. But I want to ask, what do you say to the young men and women who are trying to use art, okay, as a way to better themselves economically? And no, it's not like criticizing them, but it's reality.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a profession. So what do you say to those people about being authentic? Because they need to make a living, and it may not necessarily reflect what they really want to say, but it's basically a job. It's art, but it's a job. They need to make a living.
Yeah. Well, I have never separated my work from my life. Ever since I gave up mechanical engineering, my life and my work have been one. So for me, that is a beautiful thing. I want to work every moment I'm awake. You know, it's just my nature. Maybe my small German blood, I'm a workaholic. I like working. I like being active. I like doing things. You know, so, and the reason why I abandoned engineering for art was because I realized it was too easy to finish learning all there was to learn about my department in engineering. I could learn everything, and then there's nothing more for me to learn. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to be bored for the rest of my life. So I was looking for a field in which, or a field that would force me to keep learning and discovering new things for the rest of my life. It's actually what I wanted. That was my desire. That was my dream. That was my wish. So you can never finish learning this job, this craft, this skill. What would I tell somebody who is looking at music solely as an easy means to an economic end? I'll say go and do medicine. It's much easier. And they will respect you much more and you'll make far more money. Don't do music. Medicine is much, much easier. So if it's money you want, go and do medicine or go and do accounting. If it's a means to an end. You know, as Mensa said, Mensa has been doing this for 20 years. He's just beginning. My father was a doctor. After 10 years, Charlie, he was a big man in a hospital. You know, I don't know very many artists who become a big man after 10 years. All the artists I have worked with, it has taken them 10, 15, 18, 20 years to get to where they want to go. You know, I don't know anybody who, well, unless you're going to become an academic, nobody spends 18 years in university to graduate, to go and get a job, to earn 15,000 euros a year, which is where many artists will start off as. As an artist, if you're making 15,000 euros a year, it's not bad, but at least you are living. You can survive off it. So once you can survive off it, that is your starting point. So for somebody who thinks music or the arts is an easy way to make some money, I'll tell them give up. Stop. My brother, go and find my sister, go and find something else to do. This is not for you. Art is not work. It's not. If you are going to approach art from a work that, oh, I wake up in the morning, you know, I've worked in an office before. You know, I wake up in the morning, I get to my office at 9 o'clock, 5 o'clock, in fact, not 5 o'clock, 4:30, even before I've left the office, I've already shut down my mind. I've closed for the day. My mind is off. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do when I leave the office. So I sell my mind to my company for 7 or 8 hours a day. And I mean, this was 1991. They pay me £1,000 a month. So if that is what you want, then do that. But that is a job. Art is not a job. Art is not something you can turn on and turn off. Even when I'm dreaming, I'm thinking about this. It's not a job. So anybody approaching art as a job, I would advise you to go and look for a proper job.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Any more? I would like to say something in addition to an earlier point made. How will we ensure that the next generation are curious enough to ask questions and break down all these obstacles that is confronting us, is preventing us from, you know, achieving or doing or progressing our individual societies or our fields? Because you look at it, it's the same institutions, it's the same schools, the same curriculum that they are teaching. The society is very conservative. This whole young boy, big man, you don't question authorities, still exists. So how do we go about dismantling so that the next generation will have a better society than we do have now?
Conflict is all it takes. A little bit of conflict. You know, conflict is the only way to change something. I do not believe that critical mass can possibly come from within our educational system without drastic educational reform. However, those sooner or later, enough people will be excluded from the educational system for them to acquire a critical mass. So, yes, change is violent sometimes. You know, change is bloody, it's brutal. Sometimes change is bloodless. But a war has to be fought. This is not something, you know, nobody's going to give up their power easily. You know, so in order for us to have a generation that takes critical thinking for granted, we are going to need quite, it has to be quite a violent and big paradigm shift. And I only see conflict creating that kind of paradigm shift. You know, extreme hunger, war, you know what I mean, total breakdown of the system. I don't see it happening outside of that kind of extreme situation. I'm not saying I'm not being hopeful. Another perspective I have over this is all it takes for the world to change overnight is a change in consciousness and awareness. Yeah. And thanks to TikTok, you know, 3 billion people can watch a video in 10 minutes. And, you know, maybe TikTok is what is going to bring a transformation of human awareness, you know, which will enable the revolution to take place. But even though I know everything changes overnight with just a shift in consciousness or a change in awareness, achieving that critical mass when we have an educational system, a government, a police force, and a prison, you know, that's a huge machine designed to keep this thing in place. Not even, you know, notice I didn't mention the church. That was a conscious effort. But we've got to remember, you know, schools, our schools
were missionary founded.
Yes. Yeah. Once you go to a school and you are forced to pray, they are not teaching. This is not an education. It's a religious indoctrination. Prayer should never be compulsory. Yeah. You know, it's a coincidence I rejected religion so early. But in kindergarten, they said, hey, the Christians are the lambs of God. And we had sheep and goats at home. And I knew sheep were very stupid animals. So, you know, everybody in my class agreed, you know, okay, yes, we are the lambs of God. And me, I told the teacher, well, you have enough lambs. Me, I want to be the goats. So, and that was it. Once I'm on the side of the goats and not the sheep, I'm not a Christian. I didn't realize what an important decision it was at the time. But, you know, I've avoided religion ever since I was 4 years old or 5 years old. Wow. And I mean, I've been beaten for it. I've been sacked from schools for it. But it didn't make me change how I felt, because no matter what they did to me, I felt that they must be wrong. You know, why is this fully grown man, you know, Mr. Hinson, you are 40 years old. Why are you afraid of me? I'm 80 years old. You know, why do you have to beat me every day? You know, why are you afraid of me? And realizing as an 8-year-old that my 40-year-old teacher was afraid of me actually gave me a lot of power. And I really, really enjoyed it. Because I knew I wasn't scared of him, but he was scared of me. And the only reason why he was scared of me is because I said the Bible was written by a liar like me. You know, and he asked me to retract my words. And I said, well, I said the Bible was written by a liar like me. I've already said I'm a liar. So if I retract my words, actually, then you are making me blaspheme. Mr. Hinson, do you want me to blaspheme? What I said is not blasphemous. I said the Bible was written by a liar like me. So I've said I'm lying. So, you know, and then he caned me every single day because I refused to retract it. And it made no sense for me to retract it because, you know, that is my perspective. I'm not a Christian. Yeah. You people can be Christians. I'm not stopping you from being Christians. When you people are praying, pray. I'll watch you and you watch me. And I remember in class 1, class 2, you know, I had female teachers until I got to class 5. All of them understood me. When everybody's praying, I'll watch the teacher will watch me. We just watch each other. Nobody says anything. If the teacher says, hey, Panji, close your eyes, everybody in the class will open their eyes. So we just had a silent understanding. You people are praying. I'm not going to stop you from praying. I'm not going to interfere. I just sit down quietly in my corner and I watch you people pray. When you people finish praying, then we begin the class. You know, so, and I remember in class 1, when Miss Grant said, Panji, why don't you close your eyes when we are praying? I said, Miss Grant, if your eyes were closed, would you have known my eyes were open? So, Miss Grant, I want to be like you. You know, you are a good Christian. You can pray with your eyes open. I want to be like you. You know, and, you know, the fact that teachers were so threatened by just my refusal to comply. You know, why am I a threat if I don't want to follow your religion? I shouldn't be a threat. You know, everybody who is a Christian is not a threat to me. It's your choice. You do what you want. Look for God. It's your prerogative. Everybody must. I mean, everybody has the right to seek God, love, and happiness and justice. Ghana, our motto is freedom and justice. It kind of incorporates all these. You know, so it's our educational system was very, and you can see, our educational system was very, very oppressive to somebody like Mensa. Our educational system was very, very oppressive to me. You know, so, and yet, I didn't give in. I paid the price.
And here you are.
Well, you know, so it's, but it's hard for a child to fight an adult. Yeah. It's hard for a child to fight a system. So the vast majority of children are going to give in simply because, Charlie, it's too much hard work. If you're not stubborn like me, you will give up. After a while, Mr. Hinson will cane you and say, okay, yes, it's true, it's not true, I lied. You know, you just give in. But, you know, our system is total destruction, the only solution. Bob Marley said it. It's inevitable. It's going, something has to give. You know, Africa cannot remain in this situation forever. Something has to give. And we, my generation, the generation before me, you know, all of us are patient enough to wait until it is our turn. And all of us believe it will be our turn before we die. So we are waiting till we go, which is our turn, and which we go and chop from somewhere. But somebody is going to do the calculation and realize, Charlie, it can't be everybody's turn. So we need to change the system. You know, we are the fools who believe it's going to be our turn one day. It's not. You know, it's just that we have been conned to believe it. You know, so, I mean, I think people are going to come along who don't swallow the bullshit. And I can't say my goal in life, but if I can put any energy into helping people to realize that point or get to that point sooner, I'm all for it. I realize I'm privileged in society, and when transformation comes, personally, I'll be forced to lose. Yes, that's okay. A new system will come. And that system most likely will be forced to be based on more merit, at least initially. And then that merit will also become entrenched, and then we get to a system of privilege again. But every now and then there'll be a revolution which cleanses the system. So I'm not talking about Rawlings revolution, not that kind of bullshit revolution. Yeah. No, a proper revolution.
Sure. Before we wrap up, Mensa, I know you have a project coming. Can you talk about that?
It's quite a, wow, thank you. It's interesting. My album actually, solo album, is out on this Friday, the 22nd, and surprise, surprise, it's called Bonzi, which is my first name, but Bonzi in Akan means speak up, which in a sense is no different from this issue of resistance that we're talking about. I'm quite excited about it, actually. My last full solo album was Nabon Mango Street, which is over 10 years ago, and everything in between. So it's I think it's all serendipitous that this is happening this way. So Friday, Bonzi is out, but you know, just a big thank you to you guys also, Panji, which is always a great pleasure and an education and just pure entertainment in a very inspiring way to have Panji in any form or conversation, whether we're drinking palm wine or burning incense.
Oh, God bless you, God bless you, God bless you.
And you know, big shout outs to the whole Pija team. Sway, I mean, every time you touch on anything, it's you know, it creates great opportunities. So man, and thank you for asking me to sit in on this. I knew that if Panji was going to sit with me, it would be more about me listening to the joyous stories and from Panji, and he's proven himself, proven me right once again. But yes, man, Friday, Bonzi is out on all streaming platforms, and we're gonna do a nice event sooner than later on in Accra somewhere. So you guys are all invited. So
yeah. On this happy notes, we draw the curtain on this conversation, this panel session. It's been an incredible evening. I've learned a lot from my guest, Panji, very experienced. Mensa, he's still doing his thing, you know, giving us entertainment, conscientizing us across all levels. And I would like to also thank the organizers of Pija for allowing me to
Yes,
host
thank you
this.
very much. Thank you.
This is my first time of moderating a panel like this, and I think it's been great. And I
You're
also
natural.
and I also want to thank you, the audience, some of you who stayed behind, and those who asked questions, those who listened. I'm very glad that you stayed behind to be part of this. I really appreciate you. And I hope next year, when the events come around, we see a bigger crowd and we have a very exciting topic to discuss as well. Thank you very much. And this is where we draw the curtain.
Thank you, guys.